everyone. I'm Laurel Griffith and welcome to Sunday School. Today we will be in the book of Judges and we'll be looking at chapter 4 and read some selected verses. Before we begin, I'd like to give you a little context for where we are in this very interesting account. So we'll be talking about Deborah, the judge and prophetess that God used. So let's figure out where the Israelites are. What has happened? Joshua has led the Israelites across the Jordan River into the promised land. And as long as Joshua is alive and is the leader of the people are centralized, and he is directing them to take portions of the land and to occupy it. But Joshua is the one who calls them together and gives them direction. And Joshua is the one who leads them militarily, and Joshua is the one who leads them to continue in their allegiance, their loyalty, and their worship of the one true God. But when Joshua passes away, the people spread out and everything is decentralized. And so they end up living as the custom in this society in something called clans. And within this clan, the oldest man would be the patriarch of the clan. And within the clan would be his wife, his grown sons, the sons' wives, and their children. And then any unmarried female that would have been brought into the family unit there. And so any daughters would have gone with their spouses into the husband's clan. So this was, the women were the ones who moved. The men brought the women to their clan. So the clans were spread out, and most of the settlement was in the more mountainous regions, and most of Israel had not yet taken over the more fertile seacoast and the valley. So the problem that was going on, though, was a cycle that seemed to always plague Israel, and that was the cycle of rebellion. And so if you wanted to think about it as a circle, you could draw a circle, or you could show it in a line, but essentially it was the same thing happened with frequency. And so the people would be blessed, they would be in a time of prosperity and peace, and that is when they would begin to fall prey to the pressure to worship the Canaanite gods. And then they would begin to be influenced by the culture around them instead of influencing the culture as God had commanded. And so they would get caught up in the worship of the Canaanite gods, and God would use the armies of Canaan to then punish them. He would allow the Canaanites to come in and to punish the Israelites, whether through war or slavery. And then the Israelites would recognize their plight and would then once again call out to God and to ask God for his intervention. God would intervene, and the way God would choose to do this is he would raise up a judge. And this judge would be a part legal authority, but also part military leader. And the judge would come in and lead the people to overthrow the Canaanites, and then there would be a time of prosperity again. But unfortunately, the cycle would repeat itself, and it would go again and again and again. It was just a never-ending cycle, and with each repetition of the cycle, the depths of depravity grew deeper and deeper. So the sin became worse and worse, and you can trace that through Judges and see that from the beginning to the end that things have really become very dark, and the sin has become so pronounced. And so they don't go back to the starting point, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's like the repentance and the healing that comes and the freedom that comes, but they have already begun to spiral, and the spiral goes deeper and deeper. So this is what has happened, and we are in chapter 4, and God is going to raise up a judge, and this time it's someone who might be considered unlikely, for she is a female, and her name is Deborah, and she is going to be called not only a judge but also a prophet. So let's read verses 1 through 3, and in these verses you're going to see the cycle that I was just referring to. Again, the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, now that Ehud was dead. So the Lord sold them into the hands of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Hazor. Sisera, the commander of his army, was based in Harosheth Hagoyim, because he had 900 chariots fitted with iron and had cruelly oppressed the Israelites for 20 years. They cried to the Lord for help. So here you see the cycle. The Israelites have rebelled, and now they have been enslaved by the Canaanite king, and the Canaanite king's name is Jabin. And so this would have to have created this memory throwback to Egypt and the time that their grandparents would have been enslaved. Something I would point out to you about where the Israelites are at this point. Their grandparents are the ones that would have been set free from slavery. The next generation would have been their parents, would have been the ones that had been allowed to go into the promised land. And now this is the third generation. These would have been the sons and daughters, because Joshua and that generation before, for the most part, those people have all passed away. And so you have the sons and daughters that are there now within the land. And they are 3 generations past they have no experience with the direct provision of God. They were not delivered from slavery. They were not provided for in the wilderness. They did not see the parting of the Jordan River. And so here they are moving into this culture that is has so much prosperity, and there's so much pressure to worship these idols that are in the surrounding culture. And here they are, and they are removed from their understanding of who God is and what God has done for them. And I think right there, my friends, is a point of application. If we look at this ancient story and try to figure out, well, how does this speak to us? Perhaps one of the greatest points that we can make is that anytime we begin to experience our faith as being something that was not our own, but was rather just something that was passed on to us from our past, it is weaker. We need to have our direct experience with God, our direct experience with knowing who God is and what God has done in our lives, done for us. Now, of course, we pass our faith along. We tell the stories of our faith, and we read scripture, and we talk about God to our children, our grandchildren. But we have to have our own experience with Jesus Christ. We can't rely on the experience that our grandparents had and expect for us to have the conviction that we need to be able to withstand the pressure of the culture. And so that is what you're seeing here, is this generation of Israelites is succumbing to this pressure to worship these idols that are everywhere in Canaan. And when that happens, God allows the Canaanite king and the armies to come in and to punish them and take control of them. So that's what's happened here, and they have been enslaved. These verses also point out that the general that is running things on behalf of the king is named Sisera, and Sisera has under his control iron chariots. So these would have been a new technological development in history at this particular time, and they would have been something that the Israelites would have not only not seen, but they would have nothing to compare to in terms of being able to fight them. They would have been something that would have been far superior. You can think about it as if it's a tank. These were fighting platforms, and they would be moved and pulled around by horses, and then the army would be able to stand high above the battlefield and be able to shoot arrows and spears, and they would be protected because of the iron on the chariots. Okay, so the Israelites have been living like this for 20 years, and they've called out to God for help. So let's go to verse 4. Now Deborah, a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men from Naphtali and Zabulon, and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River, and give him into your hands." Barak said to her, "If you will go with me, I will go, but if you don't go with me, I won't go." "Certainly, I will go with you," said Deborah, "but because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours. For the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman." So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. There Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went up with him. So Deborah is a prophet and a judge, and she holds court under the palm tree that has been identified with her. So it's the palm of Deborah. So this would have been a location where people would have come from throughout Israel to come to her to provide wisdom and leadership in their personal affairs, in affairs between the clans. She also is providing leadership for the country. And so the judge would have been the ruler prior to kings. The kings have not yet come into Israel. That's when everything will be centralized. But now with judges, the rule of the country is decentralized. So Deborah has part of this country that she is responsible for. And the people come to her for this kind of wisdom and leadership, and she exercises her authority. But God has also raised her up to be a prophet. And so as a prophet, what Deborah does is she listens to God and then speaks for God into situations. And throughout the Old Testament, the prophets were used by God to speak truth into situations that were where people were rebelling, where people were turning away from the worship of the one true God. So Deborah is being told by God what to say to the people. And here God has told her to contact Barak. Barak would have been a military commander, and it seems they have a relationship with one another, that they have known each other in the past, for he knows who she is, and he responds, and he comes through enemy lines to get to her. So Barak's, even the fact that he comes to Deborah is something that's rather impressive. And then when he gets to Deborah, he listens to her with respect and agrees to do what she says. Now, what Deborah is asking him to do is pretty big. It's a pretty big deal. Probably felt pretty risky and outrageous to Barak. Number one, he is supposed to assemble a group of 10,000 men to go and fight the Canaanite army and to free the other Israelites. So some of the Israelites are enslaved. So he's got to go to these other tribes that are not being affected by the Canaanites and recruit these men and take them with him into battle to free their countrymen. So there would have probably been some resistance from the Israelites that he is going to speak to about joining him in something that looked pretty much like it's a suicide mission, because they are so outmanned. The weaponry is so different. What these 10,000 soldiers will be taking are homemade, handmade weapons. They are farmers, and they are people, frontiersmen, and what they will take with them are things that they've used in their own professions, and they're going up against these iron chariots, or what we would see as tanks. So it's a ragtag bunch versus a well-trained and equipped army. Deborah's telling Barak to do that, and then she is going to give him the instructions of when he is to move forward. Now, Barak says he will go, but he is only willing to go if Deborah goes with him. And so there's different points of view on Barak's response to Deborah at this point. Some people have said that this reveals his lack of courage, but I think Barak has shown his courage already. He's demonstrated it already. Number one, in even getting to Deborah through enemy lines, and then being willing to lead in this way. But Dr. Sandra Richter, who has done a wonderful study on Deborah, and I would encourage all of you, if you've got time, to take this study. We've got the resources at the church. Just let me know if you're interested. It's well worth your time, and you'll learn so much. Dr. Richter says that Barak wants Deborah to go with him because he knows that she is the prophet of God, and that she is the one who will keep him in tune with what God is saying. He will be fighting under God's direction when he hears from Deborah. And that is why Barak is insisting on Deborah going with him. That it's not a lack of courage, but it's more of the presence of his faith in God and God's voice coming through the prophet Deborah. So Deborah says to him, here, looking forward, she is able to see into the future here, and says that she will go with him. But this response, he will be surprised to know that he will share the limelight, he will share the glory with a woman. And so if this is all you're reading at this point in this story, you would be inclined to see that Deborah is saying that her name will be the one that is celebrated along with Barak. But we're about to see another woman enter the story, and it's going to put another plot twist on what is going to happen. So let's look at verse 14. Then Deborah said to Barak, "Go, this is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?" So Barak went down Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him. At Barak's advance, the Lord routed Sisera and all his chariots and army by the sword. And Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. So Barak and his men end up on Mount Tabor, which is not exactly a tall mountain, but it is higher in elevation than where the Canaanites are located. And this would not make sense as a military plan for them to leave the height of Mount Tabor to come down to fight outnumbered, outmanned against this army. But God has spoken to Deborah. Deborah tells Barak, go. This is the plan. It's time to move. And so Barak moves towards Sisera and towards the Canaanite army. The Israelites rout the Canaanite army. Now, what you don't see right here in these verses, you have to go to chapter 5 to get the full picture. Chapter 5 celebrates the fact that at the very time that the Israelites come down from Mount Tabor, God sends a flood. God sends rain, and a flood comes into this area, and this is why the chariots become ineffective. They get stuck in the mud. Isn't it just a beautiful thing to see how God works sometimes? And these chariots that were supposed to win the day on level ground, on dry level ground, are no longer on dry level ground, but they are flooded and they are caked in mud. And so the Israelite army comes in and is able to surprise the Canaanites. They are able to wipe out the army, and the general Sisera, as a coward, turns and runs. And so he leaves, he abandons his chariot, he abandons his army, and takes off running for his life. Now, we've got to find out where is Sisera. And we're going to skip a few verses and move now to this second woman that enters the story. Sisera runs to a place that he thinks is friendly. And this particular place is a tent, a home, a compound of a clan. And these were Israelite people, the tribe of Judah, who had betrayed Israel. And they had become people who, led by the husband of the clan, they had become people who were working in conjunction with the Canaanite army. And so they were traitors. And Jael is the woman, the wife, and she has been brought into this situation because she is the wife of the patriarch, but she has no voice in deciding how they're going to live. But she does have a voice in deciding what she is going to do. So Sisera comes to her tent, and let's look now at verses 21 and 22. But Jael, Heber's wife, picked up a tent peg and a hammer and went quietly to him while he lay fast asleep, exhausted. She drove the peg through his temple into the ground, and he died. Just then Barak came by in pursuit of Sisera, and Jael went out to meet him. Come, she said, I will show you the man you're looking for. So he went in with her, and there lay Sisera with the tent peg through his temple, dead. Sisera has come to this tent thinking he's going to be safe here. Jael invites him in, and she gives him a good meal and makes him comfortable and a warm place to sleep. And he thinks he is safe from any pursuit. And so Jael's husband is gone, and presumably in this battle he has gone away. But Jael is still loyal to the one true God. And so Jael looks upon this as her opportunity to participate in this fight, to do the thing that God would have given her the ability to do. And so she uses what she knows, and she knows tent pegs. She knows how to drive tent pegs into the ground with a hammer, and so she takes this, and this is how she chooses to kill Sisera. And so she drives this through his temple, and he dies. And then Barak comes by looking for him. He is seeking Sisera, and Jael says he's in there. And Barak goes in, and there is the great commander in general who's been killed by a woman in his sleep. And so here we see in this really remarkable story, with this twist at the end, how God uses whomever he chooses. God raises up all kinds of people in places that seem to be unusual places that you would not expect. And he equips them, empowers them by his Spirit, gives them what they need, and then they are then a part of how he is doing his work in the world. So you've got these three unlikely people who God has raised up, as Deborah as prophet and judge, Barak as a military commander, and then Jael as a woman who is still loyal to God in spite of her husband's decisions, and she just simply has a hammer and a tent peg. And the point of it is that it's not the strength or the ability of any of these people. It's not It's not Deborah's intellect. It's not even Barak's courage. It's not even Jael's courage, but it is God. God who is at work within them. And these three have simply surrendered. They have simply opened themselves up to how God is at work in their lives and what God wants to do within them and the world around them. So as you discuss this wonderful lesson in your classes this week, I would just encourage you to reflect on how you have seen God use unlikely people. Has God ever called you to do something that you felt unqualified for, something that seemed far beyond your capability? You felt like the unlikely person that God was choosing to use. And what does it feel like to be empowered by God's Spirit to do something that is very specific, and then you know that it is only possible because God is with you? And talk a little bit about what does this do to your relationship with God? Is this a way that your trust and your love for God is built through the process of this surrender? Discuss, is this easy? Is it easy to surrender and to be responsive to God in times like this? And then I would ask you to consider, how do you just shut it down before it ever starts? Are there times in life where we won't even consider that God might be calling us to do something that feels uncomfortable, and so we never even have the opportunity, we never make the opportunity to hear from God? What does it mean to live a life that is surrendered in terms of, are we available and are we looking for these opportunities? So this beautiful Bible story with so much drama, such an unexpected ending, is just rich with all kinds of application for our lives today. And I hope you have a good time talking about it in Sunday school. So I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great week.